right, Laurie McClain has joined us this evening, and she is running for the treasurer's position at the Republican State Convention coming up here in the month of June. And Laurie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate the opportunity.
And what part of the state do you live in, and what congressional district do you belong to?
So I live in Gwinnett County, and my mailing address is Lawrenceville, but I live in an area that is known as the Golden Triangle, which is that area between Duluth, Swanee, and Lawrenceville. So I'm actually in between all three of those. And that puts me in the southernmost precinct in the 9th congressional district in the state. So Andrew Clyde is my congressman, and I'm all for that.
So now you've opened the door. I've got to ask you, what makes the triangle golden?
Well, so I've lived in Gwinnett County for 51 years. Okay. I've been here we moved here when there were 70,000 people in the county. Now there's over 1 million.
Yes.
And it was an area where the community was super tight. Everybody knew everybody. And so I worked with a lot of homeowners associations back then, and we just sort of that's how we referred to ourselves, as the Golden Triangle. It was where everybody wanted to be.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I just had to ask that because I knew somebody would put under there in the comments, what makes the triangle golden? So at least we got that out of the way, you know?
Yeah.
Hey, but one thing we always try to do on Editorial Interchange is highlight local economies. Of course, Gwinnett's got a big economy.
Absolutely.
But can you give a local business that you like to work with a shout out?
Steve, I am so glad you asked. I would love to give a shout out to an organization that I used to be the treasurer of, which is the Hudgens Center for Art and Learning. It is a visual arts museum right over in the Gas South District, and they have some of the most amazing artwork and programs. They started off as a school teaching pottery, and I am a huge pottery junkie. So I love to go to their gift shop. That's where my husband goes for my Christmas presents every year. And I just love the Hudgens. And it just happens to be basically across the street from my favorite watering hole, which is the Duluth Marlows. I think I have my own chair there. Everybody knows not to sit in my chair. And so shout out to Glenda and Ian and Glenn, my bartender. So.
And if I'm not mistaken, if I remember the story correctly, Hudgens was the developer of the Mall of Georgia. Was that right?
Scott Hudgens actually was part of the development of Gwinnet Place Mall.
Oh, Gwinnett Place Mall. Okay,
Yeah,
I knew it was one of them.
He was a huge philanthropist. He passed away several years ago, and the Hudgens Center for Art and Learning was actually named after his wife.
Well, he's left a fantastic legacy.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
That's wonderful. The people of Gwinnett are very special to have something like that, because so many jurisdictions would love to have
It is a
museum
wonderful
like
place, and the programs that they have over there are really exciting. So, and I was on the board there for 6 years. So, big shout out to them.
Great. Well, hey, with you're running for the treasurer's position, tell us what got you involved in state party politics.
Well, if you're talking state party, um, I would say that started when I ran for treasurer in 2023. I had been treasurer of the Gwinnet party, and I was encouraged to run because of my skill set. And so I have just loved meeting all the folks all over the state. It has been such an exciting time for me because, like I said, I've lived in Gwinnett 51 years. So this is really all I know. And going to some of these smaller counties and rural counties and up north and down south has been very, very enlightening and very fun. I've enjoyed it a lot.
Tell us about your experience on the Gwinnett Republican Party. Do you have a lot of members? How's that going?
Well, I really do wish we had more. But I was elected treasurer of the Gwinnett Republican Party in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Matter of fact, I had run for office in 2020, and I will argue whether or not my race was stolen. We can talk about that later. But in 2021, I decided to get involved with the party. And so I ran for treasurer there and won that. And we had some challenges, financial challenges that needed to be overcome. And I worked super hard to give very transparent, very useful reports to our county committee. And I think they appreciated that. And I think it helped us to build some trust, lots of transparency. And as a result, over the next 4 years, we raised enough money that we were able to give local candidates a combined total of around $50,000 over those 4 years to help with their races. So I'm real proud of the work that I did with Gwinnett County. And after 2 years as treasurer, I went on to be first vice chair. So I'm a back office junkie. I learned how to do all the software programs that you have to do to run a party. We got as high as 500 members, which sounds like an awful lot, but for a county with 1 million people in it, we'd love to do even better. So um, it's always a challenge. It's always a challenge, and we work really hard to encourage people to join and be with us.
That's awesome. Hey, what would you say is the skill set that you would bring or that you bring to the state party that would benefit not only the party but the citizens of Georgia?
So Steve, this is kind of my calling card. Remember, I'm running for treasurer. Okay, I'm a CPA. I have a BBA in accounting from Georgia State University. I have a master's in taxation. I'm a certified forensic accountant. I've had an accounting and tax practice for 39 years. I teach principles of accounting at a local university. And so numbers are what I do. Compliance filing is all I've known my entire adult life. And so what I think my benefit to the party is I take those type of compliance issues off the table so that other folks who are inspirational and motivational and great speakers and great door knockers and that sort of thing, let them do their job and let me worry about this necessary evil, as you will, of compliance filing. And I think that's the best way that I can help the party and all of our candidates as well. I've actually worked with quite a few candidates, helping them with their compliance filings. It's a challenging thing if you've never done it before, and I've done it enough now that I'm able to kind of cut through the anxiety and make it a little less challenging for folks.
And I know there's staff that takes care of a lot of the accounting within the party. What does the treasurer focus on, or what? And let me add to that too. Is there anything that you would like to change about the treasurer's position to focus on?
Well, let me start with your first question. I think I have three main responsibilities. Okay. Only two of them are actually listed in the rules. So the first one is obviously I'm responsible for all of our FEC and Georgia campaign finance filings. Okay. I sign my name on them. So I have to make sure that they are accurate. And I do that. I have done that for, 2 years already. Also, I prepare financial reports for the state executive committee and the state committee to kind of give them a feel for where's the money coming from, where's it going to, not to get too technical, but if you know anything about these compliance reports, the FEC is only federal money. The state is state and federal money. And so that matters from a compliance filing point of view, but from a management point of view, I don't care if the money is state or federal, right? It's how much
Right.
are we spending on candidates? How much are we spending on events? How much are we spending? That sort of thing. So those are the two primary responsibilities that I have. But the one that I have really focused on and I think has been the most helpful for the party is I do training for all the county and district treasurers. A lot of these folks, being a treasurer is not everybody's cup of tea, right? And some of these folks have gotten dragged in kicking and screaming, okay, I'll do it if you don't have anybody else who will. And they get nervous about what their role is and what their responsibilities are. They call me, I walk them through the process, and I help take some of that anxiety away from them. I have put together a training manual that has best practices in it. And I have actually done Zoom calls. I did last in 2023. There were about 100 folks that participated in my Zoom calls, where I helped them go through that process. And then, as a matter of fact, I was actually on vacation last week, and I did a training on Thursday night with my iPad, which was challenging because the internet wasn't great down there. Um, but I was more than happy to do it because I know how frustrating and fearful it can be if this is not what you do all day, every day. And so going forward, I would like to see us do a lot more of that. I would love to start a regular communication with county treasurers. Hey, I just learned this, or this county is doing this. Have you thought about it? Here's a great fundraising idea that this county came up with. That sort of thing. And I think that would really strengthen the party, and I think it would bring folks together in a good way. So that's kind of what I'm focused on, is getting out there and working with the treasurers throughout the state.
And I got a question based on what you were saying earlier. When you say federal money and state money,
Yeah.
do you have to segregate those funds if it's coming federally? So you're spending out of two different accounts, I guess. Is that how it works?
Yeah,
Or-
actually we do. So we can't have any corporate money in our federal account. And
Okay.
so, because that's not allowed for federal election purposes. So we do have separate accounts, federal accounts and state accounts, and we file the transactions on different reports. So that is critical. But again, when you are thinking about um, making management decisions, federal versus state is not as significant. So the financial reports look different.
And just out of curiosity, because so many people don't know how the system works. And from the treasury perspective, I'm one of those people. I was in local politics for 20 years. I have no idea how the treasurer's position works in the state party. But are, are there some expenditures that are allowed under federal that aren't allowed under state, or vice versa, that you have to carefully select which pot of money you're coming from?
There are. Now, it's not as easy as um, this expense has to be done federal, this expense has to be done state. For example, some of our employees, they can at the Federal Election Commission considers that part of their activities are federal election activities. So their portion has to come out of federal. That portion, the other portion can come out of the state, right? But that's an accounting nightmare. How are you going to do the payroll that way? So there's a lot of balancing back and forth that goes on. And Karen Henschel, our accounting director, she is a genius when it comes to knowing how to allocate all that stuff and get it done properly. So it's somewhat complicated. And she's got so many years experience that I rely on her to help me with those
On a personal note, tell us about the most influential person in your life.
things. Steve, I'm going to pull out the old standby, and I'm going to tell you that the most influential person in my life was my mom. My mom died about 14 years ago. But I'll never forget a conversation that we had when I was roughly 12 years old. Um, she had come home from work. I'm sitting on the curb of the street, at the end of the driveway, because when you're 12, you do stuff like that. And she stopped her car and we got to talking. And I remember distinctly her saying, Laurie, don't ever be a bookkeeper, be an accountant. Don't ever be a paralegal, be a lawyer. Whatever you're going to do, be the boss, be the best, go as far as you can in that industry. And even back then, math was my thing. I loved math. And so I debated between math teacher and accountant. And one day I figured out that the math teachers weren't in charge, the principals were. Of course, now we know it's not even the principal. Um, and so I took a bookkeeping course in high school. I went to Parkview High School, which was the creme de la creme back when I was there. And I took a bookkeeping course. The third quarter, we were on the quarter system. The third quarter, I went in, I took the final exam after 2 weeks, made 100 on it, and never went back. And that's when I knew what I was going to be. But all that to be said, I don't know if that I would have made that decision had my mom not had that heart to heart. You know how when you just connect, it was like, wow, I never thought about that, you know? And so I've kind of tried to live my life that way ever since.
Well, nobody knows you like your mother. I mean, I've always thought that,
Yeah.
you know. I mean,
I there are so many times I think back, it's like, what would my mom think right now? You know, I don't know what she's thinking up there, but I bet she's going, I can just see her doing this.
well, hey, since you picked your mom, what's your most cherished childhood memory?
Well, that would be definitely one of them. But I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to tell you this little personal story because I think it's kind of cute. So, I went to when I was young. I was in daycare, and I was at a place called Sykes Daycare over off of Snapfinger Woods Road in Decatur. And I remember we had little angels. You know, this was back before you couldn't have angels in public places, but we had little angels that we were painting. I think I was in kindergarten or maybe younger. I don't know. I was the only one in the class that painted mine purple. Everybody else's were gold or red or green or whatever. I painted mine purple. Well, that's not even the funny part of the story. So fast forward 50 years later, I'm married to a man who went to that same daycare the same time I did. And he remembers me. He's like, I remember a cute little blonde thing because I was a real towhead back then. Um, and so whenever I think of the purple angel, it brings back oh my gosh, my husband and I were at the same daycare and 50 years later we met. So
Destiny.
I know, right? Well, and if more of the story is, and you didn't ask, um, in 2018, I had what should have been a fatal heart attack. And my husband happens to be a retired firefighter from DeKalb County. And he happened to be at my apartment that night. We'd been dating about 6 weeks. And I started acting weird. And he realized I was having a heart attack, gave me CPR. Um, I died twice in the ambulance. And then they got me to Gwinnett County Medical Center and brought me back. Long story. But I don't believe in coincidence. I believe God has a hand in everything. And so me dating him is the reason I'm alive today, because otherwise I would have been in my apartment by myself. And so when you tie that back to the daycare, it's like, this is a God thing. There's no other explanation for that.
You have a little purple angel watching over you, didn't you?
There you go.
That's incredible. Neat story.
Isn't it?
Wow.
Yeah, it's
I'm
pretty cool.
telling you,
It's pretty cool.
talking about the circle
I know.
going around there. I mean, that's
Right?
incredible. Well, hey, on the party, what are some areas from your experience where the party needs to improve?
Well, so I go back to what I did with Gwinnett County when I first got involved there. And we over communicated, okay? Incredibly transparent. And I think, it rather err on the side of too much information than not enough information. I think when you do that, you bring people together and you give people the opportunity to say, I don't like that idea. And you say, well, let me tell you why we do like that idea. And you have conversation. And I don't think we've had as much of that as I would have liked. Maybe a little bit more conversation in a group setting where we're not yelling at each other and calling each other names, and just kind of resolving differences, and agreeing that there are times when we're not going to agree, and we just move on. So I do think more communication and a whole heck of a lot of transparency is a good idea.
Let me ask you this. One of the complaints that I hear on email, social media and stuff is there weren't enough meetings from the state party. Apparently there were just a couple of meetings a year or something. Is that part of your communication
That
issue?
to me, that was unfortunate. I felt like I mean, the last executive committee meeting we've had was August of 2024. Now I get it. Everybody was busy with the election. I mean, I was kicking my tail here in Gwinnett. So
Right.
I get that. Um, but when you feel like you're not part of a team, and I think the meetings, whether they were Zoom meetings or even just group chats, if we could communicate, hey, this is what we're doing in this county, and this is what we're doing in that county, I think we'd have been an even stronger force going into the election. I do think it's unfortunate that we have not had more meetings. And I mean, I'm not a fan of meetings for the sake of having meetings, but communication is big. And if, even if you're not going to do an in-person meeting, let's do a Zoom call where at least a few people will have an opportunity to get something off their chest, and let's deal with it rather than letting it fester. One thing I know about human beings is they require their psychology requires certainty. And if they don't know the answer, they're going to make one up. And then they're going to go out and find facts that back them up. And it's unfortunate. I think we've done a lot of that because there has not been direct communication about what is or is not happening. So yeah, I've been disappointed in the number of meetings that we've had.
Um, what do you think the party is doing right? Something that they're right over the target on and hitting.
Well, I really think we have a great message. I really do. I mean, we are resonating, look at all the data nerds can tell you better than I can, but look at all the groups that came out and voted for Trump. I think the message of the Republican way of life is resonating with people. And so, if we did just a little bit better job of getting it out there, I think we'd be unstoppable. And I think 2026 would be a slam dunk. Because I do think we have the message that people want to hear right now. I really do.
Well, as a Republican and as a party official in Gwinnett and in the state, what are your expectations of Republican elected officials?
As a party official, I expect a return phone call. That's it. You don't have to agree with me. I don't have to agree with you. But when I reach out to you as a party official, I just expect you to return my call. As an individual and a constituent, I expect you to do what you said you were going to do. Promises made, promises kept. And and I'm the first one to say, you did this. Please explain to me why you voted the way you did before I publicly bash anybody. Right. I wouldn't bash anybody anyway, but you know, I like to know the backstory. How did you get to that conclusion? What do you know that I don't know? And that, like I said, so as a party official, all I really want is a return phone call. Tell me where you got to where you are, and I'll share it with my people.
Do you think the party applies enough leverage, especially like in the state legislature with the Republican um, House and Senate members? I know there were certain pieces of legislation that I would dare say if we polled Republican constituents in this state, probably would have been at least 80% in favor of, and they didn't make it through. So, I mean, do you think there's a situation where perhaps we're not being firm enough with our elected officials or not? What do you think?
Well, I guess, well, I can't speak for the elected officials and why they do what they do unless I've specifically asked them. Um, I think that there's a disconnect between elected officials and the party. Um, Not sure where it came from, not sure. I mean, I'm not exactly sure how to fix it, except it may be a one-on-one personal conversation that we have to have with them. I agree that there's a disconnect, which is, we should all be on the same team doing the same thing. But again, when an elected official votes in a way that I disagree with, the first thing I want to do is say, you tell me what I don't know about this. Okay. Because it's very possible that you know something I don't know, that there is another bill, there's another law out there that's going to make this a mess, you know? So sometimes it's not that the public official doesn't like what we want to get done. It's that the way it's being done won't work or it will have unintended consequences. And so, again, I go back to there needs to be more communication with our elected officials.
And I do know sometimes, in fairness to elected officials, sometimes in the legislature, there's some shenanigans where somebody adds language to a bill on the last day within 4 hours of closing, and then you've got to vote against it because they've messed the entire thing up. So I mean,
Yeah.
I do understand why some of it, but there were a couple of bills that I talked to everybody I've talked to who's a Republican have asked me why didn't those pass, and I'm beside myself trying to figure out why they don't pass. It's
And
just
again,
amazing.
that is let's go talk to those elected officials. Why'd you vote the way you did? Explain that to me. And if they can't
Right.
give me a good reason, then I have no problem going out and saying, hey, he screwed the pooch on this one.
Right.
We need to
Well,
talk about that.
as the midterms are approaching, and of course, the midterms are always a tense time for the party who has the presidency.
Right.
Um, what would you describe as success for the party heading towards the midterms? What would you consider a success for us?
Getting rid of John Ossoff. I think, I mean, this is now, keep in mind, Steve, I'm an accountant. Okay. I'm not a political wonk, right? Um, but I really believe our statewide candidates, whoever ends up being, the nominee for our statewide offices, we're going to stay red. I'm not worried about that at all. I do worry, and I know Ossoff is a statewide race. Um, I do worry about that one. And I think it's going to take something very similar to the Trump Force 47 strategy to take care of that. So that's my focus, is making sure that we are laser focused in on that one race and that we get the people out to vote, whatever it takes.
And I know too, if you've been watching social media, I'm sure you do, there's been some contention with the chairman's race. It's gotten kind of tribal. Do you side with one candidate or the other? Or are you trying to be neutral in all of this? What's your position?
Well, Steve, let's face it. I fully intend to be reelected as treasurer, so I'm gonna have to work with one of them. And I know I think I know what I get with Josh. I think I know what I would get with David. And I am prepared to do whatever it takes to do my job the best I know how. So I'm just going to let the delegates make that decision.
And we've gone over a broad range of topics. Is there anything that we should have discussed that I didn't bring up that you want to go ahead and tell the viewers?
I'll just say that I am a lifelong Republican. I am very well qualified for this office. Um, and I have thoroughly enjoyed working with all the county chairs and district chairs. By the way, I'm also the treasurer for the 9th district right now. So I would love to be able to continue to do that. And I think we need to put more focus on our statewide outreach at whatever level. You know, the first vice chair and the second vice chair, their responsibilities are a little different than mine. But if we all are rowing the boat in the same direction, regardless of who wins, then Ossoff is out of there. And that's my goal.
Well, if people want to find you, do you have a campaign website or a Facebook page or something that you use?
I don't have a separate Facebook page or a campaign website since it's such a short, you know, campaign season. But my phone number is on, and my email address is on the state GOP website. Most people know it. The county chairs all know how to get in touch with me. So I'm very, Google me and you will find my contact information. I'm all over the internet.
Well, Laurie, thank you for carving out some time with us, and we really appreciate it. And good luck to you coming up for the state convention.
Thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too. We hope you enjoyed the interview with Laurie McClain. Please, if you're a delegate, the time is getting short here before the state convention. If you're a delegate for the Republican Party going to the state convention, share these interviews with all your friends who are going to the convention. And if you would subscribe, and this is what makes our channel. We hope you're enjoying longer form interviews. We hope we get more substance in your interviews. We try not to lean any which way with bias. We try to give you straight questions that you would want to ask yourself if you are in front of them. So if we're doing a good job, please put a comment in there and let us know. If there's something we need to prove, put that in the comment as well. But we're on all your social media platforms, so please subscribe. I've got a couple of people, we just talked about it earlier today. We've got a couple of people who use iHeart in their car, and they listen to all of our interviews while they're driving to and from work using iHeart in their car. So if you've got a long commute, you can listen to an interview. We'd love to have you do that. Thank you, and we'll see you at the next interview.